Good morning. Um, Myself Kausakazi. Today we are going to discuss about the scope of supply. Before that, we'll have a look on the GST. GST, it is an indirect tax. It is an indirect tax which is levied on the supply of the goods and services or both. Article 366 12A of Constitution tells GST is a tax on supply on goods and services or both, except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. As I said, in GST is an indirect tax which is levied on the supply of the goods and services or both, except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. And alcoholic and liquor are not included in the GST. Now, before understanding the scope of this supply, we must understand what is the actual meaning of this supply according to the GST. GST has given certain parameters. When all those parameters are satisfied, then it is called as a supply according to the GST. Now see here, Section 7 of GST Act of 2017 states scope of supply. In order to constitute a supply, the following elements are required to be satisfied. When these following elements are satisfied, then it is considered as a supply according to GST. Let us see these elements one by one. Supply of goods and services. If the supply should be either of the goods or the services. If the supply is either of the goods and services, then it is considered as a supply according to GST Act. Next, supply is for consideration. The supply should be for consideration. Consideration refers to when two people mutually agree for something monetary or non-monetary. It is known as consideration. When buying and selling takes place with money or without money, it is known as a supply for consideration. When a supply is done for the consideration, it is considered as a supply according to the GST Act. Supply is made in the course or furtherance of the business. The supply should be made in the course of the business or with the intention to carry on the business. Then it is considered as a supply according to GST Act. Next is supply is made by a taxable person. When a taxable person makes a supply, it is also considered as a supply according to GST Act. For example, if a manufacturer supply the manufactured goods to the distributor or the wholesaler, here manufacturer is a taxable person because he will be producing a number of products and he will be earning in lakhs together. He is liable to pay tax. So, when the supply is made by a taxable person, it is considered as a supply according to the GST. Next, supply is a taxable supply. Or supply, whatever the supply is going to happen or take place, it should be a taxable. When all these 5 parameters or all these 5 elements are satisfied, then it is considered as a supply according to GST. Now, coming up to the scope of supply. Scope of supply, as you can see here diagram. Section 7 of CGST Act includes all the important factors about the scope of supply. There are certain schedules involved in it. Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3. And also there are certain subsections. Under Section 7, there are subsections like 1, 2, 3. And there are also clauses under that A, B, C. We are all going to discuss about it in the further slides. Let's move. First, we will discuss about the meaning of the scope of supply. What is the scope of supply? It is mentioned in the Section 7, subsection 1, subsection A of GST Act of 2017. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods and services such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal, made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of the business. Supply includes all types of the supply, whether it may be a sale, it may be a transfer, it may be a barter, it may be a rental, etc. Made for a consideration. Consideration, as I have said, two persons mutually agreed monetary or non-monetary for the supply. It is known as a consideration. In the course or the furtherance of the business. In the course of the business or with the intention to carry on the business. Now let us understand these terms. You can see here, sale, when a person sells the good, it is known as the sale. Transfer, when a person transfer the entire business to another person, it is known as the transfer. Barter. In ancient days, when the money was not involved in the business, there was a barter system carried on. Barter system refers when one person exchange the goods in terms of the goods itself. It is known as a barter system. Exchange, when the goods are exchanged in terms of the money, it is known as the exchange. License, when you permit someone to use your property for a specified period of the time, it is known as licensing or license. Rental, when you give your immovable property for use on the rental basis, or you'll collect the rent on monthly basis, it is known as a rental. When you give the same immovable property for the lease, lease are for long period of time. It may be of 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, based on the agreement done between the parties. And disposal, shutting down of your business or completely closing your business. It is a meaning of disposal. Here you have understand now terms. You can see here. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods and services. Either it may be sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal, made or agreed to be made for a consideration. It should be made for a consideration by a person in the course or the furtherance of the business, the person who is involved in the business or the furtherance of the business to carrying out the business. Now, coming up to the next section, Section 7, subsection 1, subsection B of the GST Act of 2017. This state import of services whether or not in the course of furtherance of the business. When you import the services from the other country or the other state, when they're not in the course of furtherance of the business. Let's have a look here. As I have said, when these 5 elements are fulfilled, then it is considered as this supply according to the GST. There is a point, supply is made in the course of furtherance of the business. When the supply is made during the course or with the intention for the furtherance of the business, it is considered as a supply according to the GST. But now in this they are telling import of services whether or not in the course of furtherance of the business is also considered as a supply according to the GST. For example, Mr. X imported architect services from other country for his personal house. It is also called supply according to Section 7, subsection 1, subsection B of GST Act of 2017 and liable to pay tax on it. When a person, Mr. X, is importing services to construct his house for his personal use and he is importing the architect service from the other country, is also liable to pay tax according to the GST because he has imported the services. If there is no consideration involved in it, even though he has to pay the tax on it. You can see here it is mentioned import services with or without consideration. Next. Section 7, subsection 1, subsection C of GST Act of 2017. This includes the Schedule 1. In Schedule 1, it states about the deemed supply. In deemed supply may apply where no consideration is received for the supply of goods and services. As I have said, if the supply is for consideration, then only it is considered as a supply according to the GST Act. But here in Schedule 1, the rule is different. Deemed supply may apply where no consideration is received for the supply of goods or services. The example of the deemed supply are as follows. Barter arrangement, as I said, where goods are sold or settled by other goods from customers, or free gift to staff, gift hampers to customers, all these come under the deemed supply. Now, where even if no consideration is charged, it will be called as supply based on the following cases of following 4 paras. If there is no consideration in the supply, it will be called as supply if it fulfills these paras or cases. Now let us see permanent transfer or disposal of the business. You are permanently transferring your business to the someone else, or you are selling your entire business to someone else, or you are shutting down your business. In this case, there will be no consideration charged, but you need to it is considered as a supply. You need to pay tax on it. Supply between related person or distinct person. Related person, the person who you know, and based on the mutual understanding you will agree to supply to a related person with no consideration, even though you have to pay the tax on it, because it is considered as a supply according to the deemed supply. Next is principal agent principle. The relation principal is nothing but the owner. Agent refers to the broker. When the supply take between the supply when the supply is done between these two parties without consideration, it is also considered as a supply according to the GST Act. Importation of the services, when the services are imported from the other country or the other state without consideration, it is also considered as a supply according to the GST Act. Next, Section 7 subsection 1A of GST Act of 2017. In this, they have mentioned Schedule 2. Schedule 2 is all about the supply of the goods and services. Schedule 2 has given a positive list of the goods and services in which it has clearly mentioned what are the goods which are considered as a supply, what are the services which are mentioned as a supply. Now let us see one by one. Here you can see transaction and the nature of the supply. Transaction. Transfer of asset. When you transfer any goods or asset, it is the nature of the supply will be either the supply of the goods, or it may also be the supply of the services. Next, land and building. When you rent or lease your land or building, it is known as the supply of the services. Treatment or the process. The job work performed by a employee or the job holder, it is known as the supply of the services. Transfer of business asset. The assets which are used in the business right now, if you are transferring your business asset, it is considered as both, as supply of the goods as well as the supply of the services. How it is considered both? For example, if there are idle machinery you are not using, if you give it for a lease, it is known as the supply of the services. If you sell those machinery for the permanent purpose, then it is considered as the supply of the goods. Next, supply of the services. As I said, when you give rent or lease for the immovable property, then it is known as the supply of the services. Composite supply. For example, when you buy a mobile phone, you'll get the charger, back cover, earphone, screen card along with this mobile phone. It is a combo pack. If you buy one product, you'll get some other product along with it. For example, I have given mobile. Along with the mobile, you'll get the charger, back cover, earphone, screen card. It is known as a composite supply. When there is a composite supply, it is known as a supply of the services. Supply of the goods refers to any goods which are considered as a supply. Next, Section 7 subsection 2 subsection A of GST Act of 2017. As here we have in Schedule 2, we have seen the supply of the goods and services, a positive list of the goods and services. Here in the Schedule 3, we will see negative list of the supply of the goods and services. Here they have mentioned a negative list of the services, stating that all these items are not considered as a supply according to the GST Act of Section 7 subsection 2 subsection A of GST Act of 2017. Let us see this negative list of the supply. First, services by an employer to employee. Commonly, employee will perform services or render services to the employer in terms of fulfilling his job. Then when he will get the salary. But here they have mentioned services by an employer to the employee. What are the services which an employer will provide to the employee? The services provided by the employer, such as he may give the driver, he may give the car, he may give the house. All these services are not considered as a supply according to the GST Act of 2017. Next, services by any court. Activities of court related to law are not considered as a supply according to the GST Act of 2017. It may be any court, district court, high court, supreme court, etc. Activities by the government, as we pay tax to the government, if activities are done by the government, the tax is not levied on them, because the government can't take tax from themselves. Next, services of funeral and burial. Services related to funeral, such as the services which are provided in the graveyard, all these services are not included in the considered as a supply according to the GST Act. Next, sale of land and building. If you sell any land and building, it is not considered as a supply according to the GST Act of 2017. Then actionable claims. Actionable claims such as the LIC or a fixed deposit. Other than actionable claims, other than lottery, betting, gambling is not involved in this actionable claim, but the actionable claims such as fixed deposit or the LIC, you need not pay to you don't have to pay any tax on the FD or the LIC, because government has already added GST in interest, premium, etc. When you get maturity amount, you need not to pay GST on it. It is already deducted from your maturity amount. Next, Section 7 subsection 2 subsection B of GST Act of 2017. Notified by the government any activities, transaction done by central government, state government, local authorities, and those are notified by government, that will not be considered as a supply. If any activities or transaction done by the central government, state government, or the local authorities, and those are notified by the government, that it will not be considered as supply. Not all the activities, only there are certain activities which are mentioned in the section 7 subsection 2 subsection B of the GST Act. Those are not considered as a supply. Next, section 7 subsection 3 of GST Act of 2017. Government may notify on recommendation of council. Government have certain council of GST, such as the council of GST may include the chairman, other members. Chairman is the finance minister, other member may be the state ministers, etc. Based on the council of GST, government will specify certain things about which are goods, which are services, etc. They will specify these are the goods, these are the services, these are treated as the supply of the services and all. So this was about the section 7 subsection 3 of GST Act of 2017. Based on the recommendation of the council, the supply is considered. So it was all about the scope of this supply. Thank you.